when you can tap on how you are feeling about approaching the situation, it changes your energy in going into that interaction. It changes the energy of the communication.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to the podcast. It is interview season once again, and I have been following today's guest for a while now. It was a pleasure hearing more of her story. You're going to get so much from our conversation today that's actionable in your life, in your relationships, and in your business. Sara Whiteside is a certified EFT practitioner and intuitive business coach specializing in work with new online entrepreneurs who are stuck in a loop of personal development, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. Sara helps her clients identify limiting patterns and beliefs and gives them the tools and guidance to break through the glass ceiling that society has built above her and who dreams of changing lives with powerful messages and content. Enjoy the episode. Sara, thank you for joining me today on the podcast. I'm thrilled to get to know more about you because I feel like we know each other from seeing each other in Zoom rooms for so long over the last few years. And I have to say, anytime I see you, you are lit up. And you have such an inviting presence that makes people want to talk to you. It makes me want to talk to you. So I know our guests are going to really enjoy hearing about you and what you're doing in the space of EFT. So I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the work that you're doing now.
Thank you, Sheila. It is an honor to be a guest on Connect with you. And it has been so amazing to feel like we know each other through these Zoom rooms that we've been in for years together now. But what has brought me to this point and becoming a certified EFT practitioner is, like most people's, a winding road. And my professional background is as a certified athletic trainer. I've worked in high schools and I do medical coverage for tournaments and athletic events. And I still do some of that work. But 5 years ago now, I left my full-time job as a high school athletic trainer so that I could come home and be more present with my family. I was at the time working from 2 to 10 p.m. And when both of my kids got to school age, that year that they were in kindergarten and second grade, I saw them for 1 hour in the morning. And it was the craziest hour of the day, Monday through Friday. And I really didn't get to see them otherwise. So I decided that was it. We couldn't keep going on like that. And so I left my full-time job to dive into what I thought was going to be full-time network marketing. At the time, I had a business that was focused on physical health and nutrition, so very much tied in with being an athletic trainer, and that felt like a natural transition for me. But I got home from working a full-time job and experienced this new level of freedom in some ways, time freedom, the ability to choose what I wanted to do every day, but also restraint in a different way. I carried our health insurance. At the time, we were pretty equal in terms of, who was between my partner and I, who was making more money. It was always kind of back and forth, but it was freedom at a cost in that respect. And so there was a lot of adjusting. And whenever we come into these times of change and adjustment in our life, two things happen. Either we transition and we kind of go with the flow and things feel like they go really well, or we go into this kind of crisis mode So I'll say that I probably hit my 40-year-old midlife crisis a few years early when I left that full-time job and went kind of into freeze mode for a few years. My network marketing business took a nosedive because I didn't keep it up. It was all on me, and I was feeling that pressure. And unfortunately, my nervous system was sending my responses in the opposite direction. And instead of taking action, I was in freeze mode all the time. And at that point, I started diving into some different coaching programs, trying to figure out, what do I need to do to get myself reignited, to get myself moving in the right direction again, because I had no idea at the time what my future looked like. If you asked me 4 years ago where I would be today, it was a big black wall. I couldn't figure it out. And it had been a really long time since I had dreamed of, what do I want my future to look like? So that's where I was. And then when I hired a coach, she was a business coach and also an EFT practitioner. That was a lot of my first experience with tapping, and realizing the depth that it played in untying all of these experiences and emotions that had me trapped in feeling like I had to move forward in a certain direction in my life. Like I had always done physical health and nutrition, and that's the way I should keep moving. And that is definitely not what I'm doing right now. Of course, what I do as a tapping practitioner is really in the mental health side of things. And that's where it all plays. It all comes down to where we are at mentally with something, because it's not about the workout or what people are eating. It's about the emotion that is leading them to do or not do something.
So true. And you said something earlier. I just want to make sure listeners heard. You were looking for someone to show you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And really, and I think we're going to come to this conclusion at the end of this podcast, it's more about how you need to be and how you need to operate, and from what place you need to operate. I love this conversation already.
Yeah, it is. It was such an evolution, and evolve was my word of the year in 2019. 2019 was a tremendous year for me in terms of really digging into EFT tapping. My marriage was in a really bad place. My relationship with my family was not in a great place. And I really didn't think my marriage was going to last the year in 2019. And really everything has changed since then, in being willing to dive into myself and how I hold things, how I have held experiences in my life, how I have had taken for decades to shoving those emotions away. I mean, I have a great German heritage in my background, and that means we're not great at expressing our feelings all the time. So that's been a new experience for me, and learning how to dig into those emotions and expressing them in a way that is not reactionary, but more responsive, and coming from a place where I can respond instead of react, because my nervous system is more regulated on a regular basis.
That is so powerful. What a beautiful story of what's possible when you take that space to really, really seek the answer, instead of shoving it away and trying to fill the void by just pushing harder, which is the culture that we are steeped in and that we were raised in. And it's so beautiful that I'm having more and more conversations with women, and some men too, who are trying a different way. There's so much that we can unpack here in what you have shared. I love how you made the space to be able to move through. And now it sounds like you're still married.
I am.
And you have, like I say, this joy. So obviously some beautiful things happen. So let's start with what happened. I'm so curious, after your first EFT session.
That's a really good question. So I had hired this business coach thinking she's going to help me figure it out and what I'm going to do with my network marketing business, and or do I need to shift it, and what am I here to do? And then we started digging into life stuff because whenever I was thinking about business stuff, all of a sudden, so quickly, it tied into an argument that I was having with my husband, or a situation that we had experienced in the past, and resentment and guilt. And I had a very high level of guilt around being a good mom, the way a good mom is supposed to be. And
Mhm.
um, there, I don't even know that I remember the first time that we did tapping together. I remember overwhelming emotion that felt like such a release, and
Mm.
this relief afterwards, that I had finally been able to kind of pull something up out of the vault and face it and come to grips with my part that I played in that experience, and taking responsibility for that, and seeing another person's perspective from this newfound place of empathy and understanding, and having these mental shifts, what we call cognitive shifts in EFT, around, because you're no longer clouded by the intensity of the emotion. When you can go through tapping and bring down the intensity of the anger, of the resentment, of the guilt, you see things differently, because it's literally calming down your fight or flight system. It's acting directly on the brainstem and the amygdala, and then it allows you to access the creative and critical thinking part, frontal cortex part of the brain. And it's magic.
That is magic. Actually, yes. Let's, for those who aren't familiar at all with EFT, because it's just now starting to feel, at least to me, more mainstream. But then
Mhm.
again, that could be the algorithm because of who I follow. These types of things come up. This could be completely brand new for people. So, if you were to describe, especially the process of EFT in layman's terms, what would you say?
So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and it is a collective group of tapping exercises and vocalizations where you use the fingertips to tap on the endpoints for the different energy meridians. So we have to give credit to the Eastern medicine philosophies and acupuncture, where this really was developed out of. It was also developed out of something called thought field therapy in the late 90s. And so bringing this thought field therapy, the vocalizations, the tapping on the energy meridians all together brings us this cognitive somatic technique, brain and body together, connected through that throat chakra, and allows you to process and rewire the emotional experience of memories from the past, and even to help to rewire projected, anticipated emotion for things that we might be going through in the future. So, like being worried about having conversations with certain people in our lives, we can tap on that. And so, in a tapping session, the points that we use are on the side of the hand, they go to the top of the head, the top of the inner eye point, the outside of the eye, underneath the eye, right on the bone, then under the nose, under the lower lip, under the collarbones, and also under the arm, right on the side of the ribs. So all of those meridian endpoints we're shifting the energy. When you stimulate those acupressure points, it's very similar to what happens in acupuncture, just we're not using needles. Some people have called it psychological acupressure.
And it's so interesting because I have heard it said that we have, for instance, twice the amount of lymphatic fluid in our body than we do blood. And so I've recently restarted a practice that years and years ago I did, but very sporadically, of rebounding. So jumping on a trampoline to move that lymphatic fluid around in and out, right? Because that holds all of the toxins that are trying to get out of our body. And we're just very sedentary in our world, many of us in the Western world, that is. And so anything we can do to move things up and out is important. And so obviously as well, when you're talking about these acupressure points, they're feeding into the system that's all connected. It makes so much sense. Like acupuncture has this foundation, and then you're just building on that. And it's so accessible to be able to just tap in any given moment. I also wanted to say, my background is in network marketing as well. I have a network marketing business. It's like 27 years old now. You want to talk about having difficult conversations. It's going out into the world and basically laying yourself bare with this beautiful opportunity, with these beautiful products that you want to share with people, knowing what to say, knowing how to share that, and being ready to hear anything. And later on, you come to realize, well, that's just true of anything, of any kind of business, any kind of job. Whether you're going for a promotion, you're going for a raise, you're going for the guy that you want, or you're trying to get your kids to do something that you want them to do, you have to be prepared for that resistance. And so these are all difficult conversations. And so having the resilience to be able to move through them to the other side does start with, how are we feeling? How are we thinking? And also, what are we holding from our past, from what we've seen from others? And now, as we hear so much about ancestral trauma, from what our parents experienced as well. And so it sounds like this is another releasing technique to move us through. That was an interesting foray for you into it. Looking for one thing, getting another. How long did it take you to realize, I need to share this with people?
Not very long at all. And actually, before I worked with the coach who was a practitioner, I had been in, I think, Gabby Bernstein's membership, and she has some tapping videos in there. So that was maybe a year or so earlier. But like you said, network marketing was my introduction into personal development. I have been also in it long enough where it was before we started on social media, and it was getting in the car with your upline and taking a trip to go visit people in their homes. And so many memories and some not great ones that I had to work through in terms of being able to build my business now, because of some of that resistance or those experiences that really, they taught me great lessons, but instead of it teaching me, okay, you just don't want to do it this way, let's pick a different way to do it, I was holding on to this is hard, this feels not comfortable, this feels, I was holding on to those feelings and those experiences, and I had to release a lot of that. I've had a lot of one-on-one tapping sessions where we've gone in and done work on my experience in network marketing. So in deciding, COVID was my deciding factor, really. From working with a coach who was a practitioner, I was really digging into the background behind it for a while and figuring out what different certification programs were out there, because like coach certifications, not all programs are created equally. I'm certified and accredited in an accredited program under EFT International. And there are many, many licensed mental health care practitioners who go through the exact same program that I went through. And they use it in their counseling practices as well. So really digging in and finding out that there was a beautiful supportive evidence in the research that backs EFT tapping was really important to me as somebody who is also a healthcare provider. And then COVID hit, and I was like, I attended an online conference where I met my mentor and decided to go with that program. And that was at the middle of 2020. So I've been certified now just about a year and a half. took about 9 months to go through the program. And it just was such an amazing experience. And every time I got to work with somebody new or on a different topic, it just continued to spark my interest in it and realize the depth and breadth of how many things that you can address with EFT. And I think that's where people think it's a little bit woo-woo because, okay, you're telling me I can tap on my face and say certain things and like, it's just going to make me feel better. And you can use it for PTSD and anxiety and depression, but also for building your business and cravings and weight loss. Like, that's like saying there's a magic pill out there.
Right.
But what do all those things have in common? They're all attached to our emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all attached to how our brain responds to experiencing those emotions. And does it trigger the fight or flight system? And then you use the tapping to calm down the fight or flight system and to experience those shifts. The research really shows significant reductions in things like anxiety and depression and cortisol levels and the brainwave activity from different stimulations, showing people pictures of foods that they would normally crave. They're doing functional MRIs and it shows how many parts of the brain light up. And then they go through their EFT training sessions and then they do the same thing afterwards and they show those same photos and there's such a reduction in the brain activity because we've pulled the emotional intensity out of it.
That is so incredible. And I love that we can actually measure things. I love seeing brain scans. I love seeing what we are thinking. And our past experience informs on our choices and then how we act them out in our life. All of us are moving through a history of some kind, knowing that we are all walking around with little and big T traumas and different experiences that we carry into every conversation. It makes sense that we all have something that we can actually move through to the other side of. You talk a lot about procrastination in EFT. Would you say that is a freeze response in the central nervous system?
A lot of times it is. It's very much a freeze response. It is a place where your brain wants to find a comforting experience. So whether that comfort comes from scrolling social media or diving into a book, be it, and there are things that we do that can very much disguise themselves as doing something good.
Yeah.
I'm reading more personal development. I'm reading more personal development. Reading more personal development. Okay, that's great until you're not doing anything with it. And I was there. I've been in that place. I've been in the place where I find myself scrubbing my kitchen floor instead of trying to reach out and connect with people. I've been in the place where I focus so much. Now, do we go into cycles and is there a time for, kind of calming down the activity and then you find your natural rhythms, right? And summer is very much a high activity time for me where a lot of people are kind of cutting back on the work. I like to dive in because that's my high energy time for the year. I am very quiet and muted in the wintertime. But when we find ourselves in these procrastinate habits, which I like to call them.
I love that.
It is because so many times because your brain is like, the other thing that you could be doing instead of doing this feels scary for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it might be something you've never done before. It might be something that you're putting off, like writing copy for a website or recording a video. Why do we put them off? Because we're anxious about maybe putting ourselves out there or potentially feeling judged for what we do put out there. So many different things. And all of those fears and anxieties are usually tied back to something that happened to us. And it could have been in middle school when you had to stand up and read something, from a paper that you wrote and somebody laughed. It could be, but if there's still emotional intensity attached to that experience, it could potentially be holding you back from from what you want to be doing in your business.
Oh, yeah. And we all experience procrastination at some point. And I find it so interesting now looking into my habits and those times that I do find myself procrastinating. I'm thinking, okay, what is causing this? Now I'm asking the questions.
Mhm.
And I think, okay, where is my mind going? Is there something that I am putting off because of some kind of fear? And then if I deconstruct that, I say, okay, well, where did that fear come from? I've never experienced that thing happening to me. Oh, I've seen it happen to someone else.
Mhm.
Like I've heard of it, I've read of it. Hey, if you've been reading a lot of personal development books, you hear a lot of the before story. And so when you're focusing on that a lot, you can start to take that in as well. And it's helpful to know that because many of these things speak to a large audience of people and of many varied experiences. And we can sometimes take on other people's stuff. I think it depends on what our personality is like as well. And it sounds like EFT is something that is a portable
Mhm.
nervous system calming solution that you can do the, as Tal Darden likes to say, the titration, the next doable piece of moving through whatever it is that's holding you back and not fire hosing yourself with, okay, I'm just going to push through and do all this stuff, because then that is can very often send us into a freeze mode because it's like, oh, it's too much. But if we're able to say, there's this one thing I want to do and I'm going to tap on it. Like, give me
Mhm.
an example of one thing. You've been having some beautiful reels put up on your Instagram lately. Let's just give an example for listeners. Let's say there's a phone call you need to make and you're putting yourself out there. And so your nervous system's flared up. What would you do in that circumstance?
Okay. So, and there's so many things I could say to some of what you just said, but maybe we'll get back to that. But
Yeah,
let's give them an example first.
yeah.
So, if I had to make this phone call or have this conversation with somebody and I'm feeling anxiety or nervousness in my body, that's how my body is responding. And what you want to do is you also want to identify where you're feeling it in your body. When you
Mm,
feel that closed off feeling, that tension, that pit in your stomach, that is your body telling you there's an emotion here to deal with. So let's say I'm feeling anxious in my stomach about making this phone call. And it's because when I picture that person picking up that phone and hearing what I have to say, I'm afraid that they are just going to straight up tell me, no, I think this is a dumb idea.
mm,
And maybe the intensity around that when I'm first thinking about making that phone call is at a 7 or an 8. Usually we judge it, 0 to 10, totally subjective.
yeah.
And so we start tapping on the side of the hand and we say, even though I feel this anxiety in my stomach when I think about making this phone call, because I'm afraid that they are going to tell me I have a dumb idea, I accept how I feel about this anyway. And that acceptance part is a key part of the setup statement.
Mhm.
It's accepting that it is okay to have these feelings. This is a human being experience, that we have these feelings. Can't have joy without the sadness. So
Mm,
we accept that it's happening, right? And
yeah.
the clinical setup statement ends with, I deeply and completely accept myself. I couldn't say that for like probably at least a year.
Oh,
I
that.
had to kind of step it back. You have to make it true to you. It has to feel true when you're tapping on it, or it's not going to accomplish the goal. So you can say, I accept how I'm feeling now, or I'm willing to witness how I feel right now. So we do that setup statement 3 times. I'll do it one more time. Even though I'm feeling anxious in my stomach, thinking about making this phone call, I'm afraid they're going to tell me I have a stupid idea. I accept how I'm feeling right now. And then we start tapping at the top of the head, anxious in my stomach. And you repeat that same phrase, top of the eye, anxious in my stomach, side of the eye, I'm feeling anxious in my stomach, under the eye, anxious in my stomach, under the nose, this anxious feeling in my stomach, the chin, anxious in my stomach, collarbones, anxious in my stomach, under the arm, anxious in my stomach. So that's one way to approach having a conversation. And I've done a lot of tapping around conversations, particularly with my husband. We have had rocky times. And what does that require? It requires good communication to be able to come back together.
Yes.
And if you're approaching every conversation with this high anxiety and future forecasting disaster, like this conversation is going to be as bad as all the rest that we've ever had, and why even bother? And, when you can tap on how you are feeling about approaching the situation, it changes your energy in going into that interaction. It changes the energy of the communication, because we are energetic beings. We are connected to each other by the energy. That's why, even though Sheila and I have never spoken face to face, we still have that energy between us, because we've seen each other. You can just connect with somebody that way. When you see that person across the room and you're like, that's the person I want to talk to. Mm-hmm. That is an energetic connection. And so when you change your energy in approaching a situation, it can't help but change the other person's energy too. And I've never had this blow up in my face and go completely the wrong way. Sometimes the conversation like that I was anticipating needed to happen, I tap on it because there's something coming up, and then it never ends up. It doesn't even need to happen, because the expected thing that we were going to have the conversation around doesn't happen, because I addressed it ahead of time. I addressed my fears. I addressed my anxiety. And so it's like manifesting a new experience of what the situation is going to turn out like.
Imagine, Sarah, if everybody was mindful in that way, how many arguments would there be? And that's not to say that we can't have differing opinions about things. It's just how we go about expressing ourselves changes. For people who may still struggle with this whole idea of shifting the energy, let's just think about, say you're in a funk over something, and then a song comes on the radio from like the best summer of your life. Does it not shift you a little bit? Maybe it might up-level you a tiny bit at least. But then if you start moving your body and like grooving to it, what happens? We get to, at any given time, shift our energy. And there's different ways to do it. And I think this way is so accessible because, say you're sitting in your office somewhere, you can't you could get up and just dance on your desk. That could be fun. But often, you can tap. The whole conversation with our partners, with those people that we hold dear, those are often the most charged, because we have so much invested, because we care so much. But the intention of going into it, being calm, being centered, with the best intention, it really shifts everything.
I just wanted to mention, not all procrastination is bad. Sometimes it is the break that our nervous system actually needs.
Right.
So I don't want anybody to hear this and judge themselves that they feel like they're procrastinating. It might actually be the rest that you need for your brain to get back into that creative space. And Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert is just the most beautiful book in the world to read or listen to in that regards. The other thing was, when it comes to these communications with the people that we love or for the people we love, as a mother, I have used this when I get into mama bear mode and I need to go have a conversation with the principal. You will see me tapping in the car on the way to the principal's office as I'm driving down the road, because I am just so fired up. I am protecting my child. But at the same time, I want to walk into that office calm, rational, clear-headed. And we can't always do that when we're so fired up by our emotions. But tapping is also a way to introduce some nervous system regulation to our kids. I've done it with both of my boys. They're 11 and 12 right now. And to use it when they are afraid during a thunderstorm, or one of them last year had some anxieties going on with school, and we were able to tap through it and just to teach them. Actually, we went to an amusement park on Tuesday this week, and their first ride of the day, I saw my older child tapping on the side of his eye before that ride took off. He was like,
Great.
I'm nervous. And he went right to tapping, and it was just so cool to see that. And I know that he has come home from school on occasion and said, this person was having a really hard time in class today, and I taught her tapping. Oh my God, my heart nearly exploded. But I do love that it can be a quick way to calm your nervous system. It doesn't take, other things, resources, or a huge amount of time. It could be something that you work on in the shower in the morning, just for a few minutes, or when the kids are driving you crazy and you run into the bathroom and lock the door. instead of taking the cookies, just tap while you're eating the cookies. So, and you can just rant too. Like, you can tap and literally rant what you were so upset or angry about, or those things that you wish you could say to that person.
Wow.
Oftentimes underneath there's a little bit something, there's a message for you too. That as you rant towards that person, you go, oh, I kind of feel those fingers pointing back at me in a little bit, in some regard. So there's always a lesson to be learned from that emotion that we're going through. And it just takes being able to kind of step back from a little bit to see what that lesson is.
Oh, I really see, as I look back, you're sharing these examples, and I'm thinking, oh, I know so many times where that would have been a beautiful practice for me. There's so many practices that I love. It's like being able to integrate the right one at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this is very connected too with being able to raise your voice on a topic, even if it's just with yourself first. Like you say, there's something underlying. I would love for you to talk also about using EFT for deconditioning and helping women speak up for themselves and rediscovering the power of their voice. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I love that it is with you as well.
Yeah, this is really one of my favorite things to talk about, especially with women, with business owners, and learning to harness the power of our voice again, where we have been silenced. There is so much power there. And it takes sometimes relearning how to use our voice in ways that we're not afraid for people to hear us, or we're not afraid that people are going to ignore what we're saying. And so when you combine the tapping with the vocalization of the EFT, it just is such a holistic process for me. And it is so beautiful to be on a first time call with somebody, or even a call at any point, and they say, it feels so good just to say that out loud.
Yeah.
The things that we wish we could tell our partners, or that we wish we had been more honest about with our kids, or so many different examples. And so my coaching framework that I use is the word arise. So A stands for awareness, which is just starting to be aware of the emotions that you're experiencing. R is for radical acceptance, which goes into that setup statement. I deeply and completely accept myself, or I accept how I'm feeling. That's R. I is for initiate voice. Start saying it first to yourself, maybe with a practitioner, maybe it's to a friend, and then to the people who really need to hear it. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it is people in public office. Maybe it is using that voice to stand up for those who can't speak for themselves effectively yet. Yeah. And S is for setting intentions. And that is, what do I want to do with this? What is the outcome that I would really love to see here? What are the emotions that are holding me back from achieving that outcome? And then E is to evolve that process. Keep going deeper, keep setting new intentions, keep using that voice in new and different ways. Maybe it's getting on your first live video. Maybe it is getting on a podcast for the first time or starting your own podcast. Maybe it is in speaking on bigger and bigger stages, if that is what is part of your vision and values.
So many women just got some permission to grow and to see that it's accessible. I love this so much. I'm so grateful that you've been able to share this here today because it's something that we haven't yet talked about on the podcast. And it's wonderful to see you practicing it and sharing it and growing your practice around it. And I would also love to know something I love to ask my guests is, other than EFT, what are some of the self-care practices that are lighting you up right now?
My biggest self-care practice is body movement. I am a very kinesthetic person. I always have been. And I really believe that that's what drew me to EFT because I didn't just have to sit quiet or think or write. I could move my body. I could tap. I can do it while I'm walking. I can do it wherever. But moving my body both in traditional workout, but also I am a tap dancer. So tapping's a little bit confusing in our house sometimes. It's like, we'll have a tapping class. Well, are you doing a tapping class on Zoom or are you actually like going to tap dance class?
That question came up in my mind. I'm thinking, can you EFT tap while you're tap dancing? And then you said that. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that would be quite challenging. But you know what? Tap dancing is such a joyful place for me. I don't feel like I would ever have the need to tap while I'm tapping, unless it was maybe backstage and I was feeling a little anxious. But when it comes to that adrenaline surge, instead of just tapping EFT, I like to shake. I like to really just get it out and kind of like using the rebounder.
Right.
I like to jump it out, just like shake and dance and get that adrenaline moving through my body, processing it that way. I am diving back into the energy, actually really tuning into my voice and using visualizations in a verbal way. Like I'll record myself for a minute or two on what is life like if I don't have these fears? What is life like if I really do use the power of my voice to the utmost capacity? And there's something about hearing yourself say it and doing these riffs on this is what life could be. This is a very different experience for me than where I was 4 or 5 years ago. I couldn't do that before. I couldn't even do affirmations at that point. I was in such a dark space. It was like I needed tapping to physically pull me out of that space to be able to open those doors again and see the possibility and no longer see that black hole or that black wall, but to see that like, this is the future and I can create it to be what I want it to be. And I can start speaking it into existence. And you can actually tap while you're doing affirmations if you'd like to put that positive spin on it. Sometimes people aren't a huge fan of like, why are you always focusing on the negative? Well, we've got to clear away the negative. You can't build this gorgeous space to live in if there's dirt all over the floor. Like the dirt is still going to be there until you clear it out. So the EFT helps clear out that dirt. And then you can use the visualization and the affirmation afterwards to help build this big, beautiful space. So, you can tap on that. And if at any point there's this little, yeah, but, or, do you really believe that's true in the back of your mind when you're using those affirmations? That's what you dig into. Okay, what is it about this that I don't believe? Is there an emotion there? Is there an experience there that I still need to go back and process before this affirmation really does become true to me?
I was going to say what happens when your mind fights you on things, because it's not natural for us to just automatically shift completely. We do have the voice, like the amygdala is trying to protect us. And actually, I named my amygdala. I call her Gilda. We tell her to go have a nap when she's being too loud. because we all have it. It's that voice that's trying to protect us. That's what our amygdala is trying to do. And so I love that you address that we can actually dig into that. Well, why am I feeling this way? Okay, let's tap on that. I'm feeling this way and move through it. And I like the connection with the affirmations, because it ties into what you said at the beginning, that just saying something doesn't necessarily make it feel true. You have to make it feel true. It has to come from a true place, at least, where there's the seed of a truth that you know could exist. And the visualization piece that you mentioned and hearing yourself say it is very powerful. It's something that I've done for quite a long time now. And I like to switch it up and re-record my life in a certain time space and what it looks like and all those experiences. And it does allow you to move into that visualization of a possible future for yourself. Whereas we spend a lot of time in our minds, often being very doomsday. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? So we need to, like you say, clean up the house in order to build something beautiful. And it's a maintenance process too. And it seems like EFT would be a very simple maintenance process to keep clearing out the mess that's going to inevitably come in, because the world we live in, it has its light and it has its dark. Being able to keep on top of that is so powerful. Well, I would love for you to share how people can work with you. What's something that they can access from you to learn more about you as well?
Thank you very much. They can come visit my website at sarawhiteside.com. That's Sarah without an H. And if you would like to take my procrastination styles quiz, which is quick and fun, that is at sarawhiteside.com/quiz. Or if you would like to pick up a guide on how to do EFT on your own, specifically for business, I have a freebie that's at sarawhiteside.com/freebie that will help guide you through that process. Both of those options will put you on my mailing list, and I send out tips and some tapping prompts, usually twice a week, actually. And so I love to keep in touch via email. So you can also hit me up on Instagram at Sara Whiteside 19.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so thrilled you could be here. And thank you for sharing the wisdom that you've experienced through all that you've come through, because hearing you share your story certainly gives a whole lot of hope to everyone listening about what is possible when you actually take some steps to move through the stuff that is in our mind that can be holding us back, and that is even in our body that can be holding us back. And we can move into something so beautiful in our lives. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great time chatting with you and with your listeners.
Everyone, thank you for the time that you spend investing into listening to this podcast for your own personal growth. You're going to find linked in the show notes all the ways you can reach Sara. And I would love if you would tag us both in this episode and let us know what your biggest takeaway is. What is something you are going to EFT tap through today? Have a beautiful rest of your day. Big blessings. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.